to the last week
Final week.
of I know the final week. Oh my gosh, the better point, better outcome. It has been 20 weeks,
Wow.
believe it or not, and it's been an amazing 20 weeks. Honestly, probably just an intense crash course on evaluations and proving your impact. And so we have been through a lot, and it's been a lot of information. And
It
so
has been
um,
amazing.
I'm so grateful you think so. And all the information is still online.
Hmm.
And I have my email. I'll put my actual email address and just my website still just even in the chat, and then put it on just I'll put my even my social media account just to make sure everybody has it, even the people that are watching this streaming. And so just a brief overview of what we've been going over though. 20 weeks of all things that were pertaining to the evaluation. So starting from problem construction, so understanding what the overarching problem is, what the real problem is, to being able to understand the heart of your problem, which is the problem deconstruction, to convert that into the mission statement, to understanding what's your solution, your programmatic solution is, and being able to figure out how you know that that solution actually addresses the problem. It's
Mm.
because you feel like it doesn't mean it actually does. And so rather than going off a feeling, you actually are knowing that this is a solution that addresses the problem, and being able to take steps to understand how to be able to prove that. And even us going over different indicators, different measurements, we went over program effectiveness, program specific measurements, to qualitative impact effectiveness, to quantitative, all these different terms that we were able to go over, to logic models, and
Hmm.
understanding how to go about doing that with resources and inputs and outputs and outcomes. There's so many things that we
So
talked about.
many.
Oh
Mhm.
my gosh. And if you put it all together, it does arguably get overwhelming
Yes.
ultimately. And I want to preface this last session with all of that, thinking of all the content that we went over. And I want to just give you all a vision starting out with this.
Did
I
you
want
press
you to,
record?
yes, it's definitely recording.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll mute myself.
No, you're good. And so I wanted to start off with this vision. I want to start with this vision and taking into consideration all the things that we have been through, all the things that we have been going over. And I want you to imagine you guys, you as an organization, being able to evaluate your programs at the top level in all the stuff that we've gone through. So even starting at knowing the actual solution to what specific problem. So it's not understanding just the problem, but being able to, at the top level, understand how to be able to address the problem with your solution through evaluations, but also being able to look at not only how to address that, but knowing and being able to prove that there is a connection, there is a correlation between your solution and ultimately the problem that you are trying to address. Imagine if you were able to go ahead and evaluate your programs to that degree, or even just to continue to be able to understand through your logic models every resource that you use, every program, every activity within your program, excuse me, being able to have intentionality and deliberation or deliberateness, excuse me, when it comes to going about making decisions, and being able to really just evaluate those programs to that top level by even using those specific things within that logic model, and just being able to understand and communicate, well, this story that really is communicated through statistics, and being able to have, just imagine being able to evaluate your programs to the level of being able to have and understand all these different statistics that are behind this being like programmatic statistics to qualitative statistics to quantitative, you having that top level organization of evaluating all these things and being able to do everything that we've been through. Imagine you being able to be at that position of evaluating your programs to that degree. Take some time to think about that. Imagine if that is, or that was, the organization, the nonprofit that you were at. My next question for you after hearing all of that, though, is sort of the question that I think about immediately after. How long do you think it would take for your organization to get to this position? And that's a question for all of you guys to think about. How long do you think it would take for your organization to get to this position? Because we all have a sort of preconceived notion. And I'll be honest, for me, when I consider all that taking all this stuff in, I'm like, wow, this is going to take me a year, 2 years, 5 years just to be able to get to this top level type of evaluating and monitoring this organization or my organization or whatever organization I'm working alongside or collaborating with. It is going to take a lot of time to be able to go about doing that. Well, I want to ask you, why do you think it's going to take that time? Why do you think it would take your organization as long as you're saying or believing that it would take? Because it's one thing to understand how long it is. It's another thing to understand why you think that way. And I think, and speaking to a few organizations, there are different reasons that have come up. And I think some of the top reasons are that you don't have the number of or enough staff members. You don't have enough staff members to be able to complete an evaluation to this level because you just don't have enough support. I think that's one of the reasons that comes up, which is a legitimate one, if I had to be honest. Or another one is you have, too many things going on at once. And that's when we'll talk about it in a second, but we talked about it in another session of there really is this idea of having or being able to multitask with multiple priorities. It is a fallacy. We only can really have one priority, but when we're trying to do too many things at once, it takes us away from ultimately being able to think about if we can do this in a shorter period of time. We think that it's going to take a long time to be able to evaluate our programs because we're doing everything at once. And it gets so overwhelming. It's like, how in the world am I going to be able to do all this stuff at one period of time? And honestly, that does add to that narrative. It's going to take a long time. But I think the last thing seems to be the heart of why we think that evaluating to this level is going to take a long time. I think we already have an idea. We already have a preconceived notion when I even bring up that question that is going to take a long time to develop an organization to that degree. We already have that preconceived notion. But here's my question for you to think about. What if it didn't? What if it didn't have to take that long for your organization to get to this position of evaluating and monitoring your programs? What if your preconceived notion was just that? What if it was just a preconceived notion? What if rather than letting your preconceived notion become truth in your reality, you just let your preconceived notion remain as a preconceived notion and you define what your reality was? What if your preconceived notion remained at being just a preconceived notion? I think about multiple examples of different things that end up taking a long period of time. Think about numerous examples of things that I think about that just take excuse me.
Hello? I can't hear you.
It's all good.
There you are.
Oh, awesome. All right, great. It happens.
Oh, I was like, what just happened?
Oh, I have no idea.
Was somebody trying to get in?
No, it wasn't that. I don't even know what happened, honestly, but it's
you was on a roll.
It's okay. It's okay. So let me go backtrack a little bit.
Preconceived notion.
Yes, preconceived
What if
notion.
it wasn't a preconceived notion?
Thank you. So what if it remained at a preconceived notion? And so I think about various examples of things that we think they take a long time, but they don't have to take a long time.
Mm.
And I think about one example, so various examples, but one of the things I think about is maturity. Think about that common phrase that we think about. Maturity comes with age.
Mm.
But what if it didn't have to?
Mm-hmm.
What if maturity didn't have to come with specifically age? What if you
That's
can
good.
have maturity at a shorter period of time?
Mm-hmm.
One of those things where it's something where we have a preconceived notion that it's going to take a long period of time, but the reality is that doesn't have to be your reality.
Right.
It doesn't have to. Or I think about change. So for me, one of the things that I grew up doing for 21 years of my life was debating. That's what we did in my family. We debated. So when I got married in this relationship, I had to understand the differentiation between debating and dialogue. For me, it's wow, I have to change from debating to dialogue from something I've been doing for 21 years.
Mm-hmm.
So naturally, I'm going to think it's going to take me 21 years to change this. But what if it didn't have to?
Right.
What if it only took a moment where I was able just to realize that I need to have a mind change and change into the very person that I needed to be?
Mm-hmm.
What if it didn't have to take as long as we preconceived it to be? Or I think about one other thing, doing things that are new.
Mm-hmm.
Think about when I do something that's new, it's this preconceived notion that, man, it is going to take me a while to understand this because I'm new at it. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to absorb all the knowledge that I need to and be able to educate myself. It's going to take me at least 2 to 3 years to be able to understand how to go about doing this new thing.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, for me, that's how I felt when it came to starting out doing evaluations. When I was working at or interning at World Vision under my mentor that was doing and feeding me all this information, it was overwhelming to the degree where, not emotionally, but more to the degree of, I don't know if I'll actually be able to get this in a year's time or even less. It's going to take me at least 4 years to digest all this information. But then I very quickly, after him speaking to me, got to a place of saying, why does it have to? Who told me it has to take 4 years? And I realized it was me. Never said anything. My other mentors never said anything. They were just information. I think in the same way, when it comes to evaluations for your organization, we have to ask the same question. Why does it have to take this long period of time that we preconceived it to take? What if it didn't have to take that period of time? I think just because we feel like something is going to take a long time doesn't mean it has to be that way. Our feelings, they may be real, but they don't always have to be true. I'll say that again. Our feelings may be real, but that doesn't mean that they're always true. And I love that phrasing because it does validate those feelings are there, but that doesn't mean that those feelings have to define your reality. Their feelings are just an indicator or a feedback for where you may be at. But that doesn't mean that you want to have to remain there. But it also doesn't mean that where you're at is true based off those feelings. And so it's amazing to understand that we have a choice in this. As nonprofits, we have a choice. And it does not have to take as long as we preconceive it to be. So I asked again, what if it didn't take as long as you think? What if it didn't take as long as you think to get to the position of evaluating your programs at a top tier level, like we just talked about sort of in the vision in the beginning of this? What if it took 7 steps in 15 weeks to do it? What if it took 7 steps in 15 weeks to go about doing that? With me individually working with your organization nonstop for 15 weeks. What if it took that to get you to this position of this top tier level organization and evaluating your programs? What if it only took 15 weeks? Would you believe it?
That would be amazing.
And honestly, the only way to figure it out is sort of like any other hypothesis, you have to test it out.
True.
The amazing thing is that that's one of the things I was able to do with 2 organizations so far of Hope for Kids and One Day at a Time. And being able to see just the continuance of monitoring and evaluating their programs and understanding the importance of doing so, and them having sort of a baseline to go off of to be able to communicate with the people they are communicating in their fundraising efforts.
Mm.
And it's so important and it's so amazing just to be able to reflect and see, wow, it doesn't have to take this long. We can actually singularly focus on this very thing and make it a top priority now, to then be able to move forward. And it doesn't have to take long. What if it only took 15 weeks? And I think that a question that we do have to address when thinking about that is, what do we think would get in the way of making this step? What do you think would get in the way of your organization in making this step and putting yourself in this position in 15 weeks? And I think for one of the organizations I'm working for, Hope for Kids, one thing that got in the way was this putting in the same category priority and importance, and making those things synonyms when they were never meant to be synonyms. Going back to one of my prior videos of thinking about multitasking, well, multitasking really is a fallacy, and there's only one thing that you can really make a priority at a time. But that doesn't mean that other things aren't important. So before, one thing that Hope for Kids was doing was they were making everything a priority. And then nothing, but because they were making everything a priority, nothing was a priority. And that's the catch-22 of that. When you make everything a priority, it crosses or it invalidates or makes everything else void. And so you have no priorities. And so it was for them to identify, we want this evaluation tool to be a priority, but that doesn't take away from other things being important. And so they made this a priority, but then they made other things. This is still important and we still have to tackle this, but this is our number one priority for right now. And that was one of the things that really just got in their way. And you got to figure out what are those things. And maybe that's for you as an organization, but we have to figure out what those things are that really get in the way of being able to take this step in really going after these 15 weeks of just doing the very things necessary to be able to evaluate our programs. And to help you out from my perspective, when it comes to evaluations, it becomes a top priority, really the number one thing. And the reason why I say that is this: the relationship of evaluations with the other things that are really important when it comes to nonprofits. So when it comes to technical branding, your social media, your influence on different media outlets, the interesting thing is, if you don't have good content, you're not going to be able to be influential on those media sources. Evaluations helps you have effective content to be able to post on those very things, their very sources, to be able to attract more attention. But if you take out evaluations and you take out the very things that are going to be able to be proving your impact in being able to communicate those things on a social media or a technical branding standpoint. I think about our evaluation relationship with cultivation in relationships. Well, the very thing that evaluations does, it helps you to have depth in your conversation, in your communication, in speaking to different partners and donors and collaborative organizations. Evaluations helps you to be able to have depth in what you're saying. And if you lack those evaluations, well, then it's going to be harder to have that cultivation. But then the last piece is grant acquisition, grant writing. A part of grant writing is you have to have that qualitative and quantitative information. And when you don't have that from evaluations, it takes away from it. And that's a vital piece of why evaluations is a really top priority from my perspective, because of this relationship that it has with everything else. And so that's why I love when it comes to coming back and looking at, wow, it is very much so worth the time to make evaluations a top priority. Because if you do that within these 15 weeks, as I individually work alongside your organization, well, then what will happen is you'll be able to see growth in all these other areas as they are equally important, but this becomes a priority. And this priority is that one thing where everything else moves. And so I end with this again. What if it didn't take as long as you think? What if it didn't take as long as you think to evaluate your programs to this degree? what if it took 15 weeks? And that's where I'll leave it.
Okay.
Taking 15 weeks. And it's been amazing again with all of you guys.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. And specifically people that I've been speaking to. So and Harriet and Mr. Derek and Monica and you specifically, but really just everybody that's been a part of this. It's been amazing. And that's why I love to end with this of, wow, is this worth the time to be able to take the time to be able to take these 15 weeks in a short period of time to be able to have a long-term impact in everything else that you do in these relationships that we have with the technical branding, with cultivation, and with grant acquisition. And so what if it didn't take as long as you think? And so with that, I'm going to end it here. I'm going to open it for any questions that you guys have. But I am also going to make sure that in the email after that, I include just my Instagram account so that you guys see just the different posts I'll be making weekly from now on after this until the next session of this comes up. And it'll be a little bit different and it'll be more interactive. But just to put my stuff on there and then just so you guys can even just continue to really just gain more knowledge about just evaluations at large. So with that, I'm going to end it here and then I'm now open for any questions you guys have.
Not that I have any questions. I will just make a statement. Thank you for all that you've put out over this 20 weeks. When I first committed to do 20 weeks, I didn't even think that we could get through it. Knowing how Saturdays can be a little challenging.
Yeah.
And knowing, but we were in a pandemic, which kind of was a good thing because it kept me kind of in place. So I appreciate all your knowledge that you have, and that was a good way to end it by saying, what if it didn't take that long of a time? And I guess one thing definitely would be from our perspective is staff.
Yeah.
Since it's primarily me juggling so many different things, and the other board members that we have, 2 of them are working and one of them has his own nonprofit and he will jump in as needed. But I knew if I had to start all over again, I would look for board members that had a little bit more fundraising expertise, social media expertise, marketing expertise, to take that weight off of me, so that it could pull together. Because now staff needs to be paid, which we don't have dollars to pay a staff. But we could interact and talk about how much does it cost for 7 steps in 15 weeks to make that happen, and see who we would have to pull. Can we do it just with the minimal people here, or do we have to bring more people in to execute what's before us?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And we can totally talk about that during our time as well, but on Mondays. But to even address that now, one of the examples I have, I have a lot of examples just because it's just real life stuff.
And that's the best example when it's real life.
Right, exactly. So Hope for Kids, again, when we met Kim Evans, where they started was they just started with volunteers. And so they were able to get just a lot of people, really just kind-hearted, good-hearted people that really were just really about the same mission. And so what happened as they were getting volunteers, it gave them time, or at least it gave us time to be able to evaluate those programs to be able to then get funding. And so what happened was this sort of mutual, like, together approach, sort of like Greek phalanx, everyone moving together, where it was we were able to gain funding by our evaluations. And as we were able to gain funding, by even helping them see we already have volunteers, we were able to start paying those volunteers and starting giving those
Nice.
volunteers jobs. And
Nice.
so it started with sort of this mutual approach of, we started with volunteers. And so we had those people, but at the same time we were evaluating, because the intention was, we want to be able to pay these volunteers to where they can hold positions at some point, but we need funding for that. And so it was, let's start with volunteers, and then let's still move forward with the evaluation being a priority. And then we'll see what money falls in. And what we've done is we've been able to then start paying people so they no longer have to be volunteers. And so with that being said, we were able to now get to the place of, well, one, my wife and myself being hired, to now we're going to be having an assistant, which is paid, I think, about $20,000, because they're coming right out of college, and it's just like a sort of an internship in a way for a year. And then they would be able to pay just other staff members, and have 3 sort of 1-year challenge type people, which is just 1 year of internship, 1 year of an internship under Hope for Kids.
Okay.
So they were all getting paid like $10,000 each, while their housing and their housing and the gas and electric and all those different utilities being paid for. So
nice.
we were able to get started at volunteers,
Right.
we were able to get to this place of, through everything we're doing,
Right.
wow, okay, this is amazing, we're able to pay. And that was through, again, the priority was evaluations. But before I even got here, what they were doing was, before the evaluation, they had the cultivation. So they had those relationships and they were building them. And so that's one thing that Kim is amazing at. And that's one thing I'm going to get her to talk about more than anything, is the relationship building.
Right.
She's fantastic at that. But that's how the evaluations were. And so that's how they were able to move forward with that.
Well, that sounds like a great idea. To first identifying the skill set of your volunteers and what skill set is actually needed. And so in my mind, once we identify the skill set, then I may be able to reach out to a few people I know that are retired and see if they would be able to help. Because the last thing you want to do is to pull on somebody who's already working and they not be able to give 100%. And you know that their job is first in priority.
Right.
So with that being said, I got a couple people in mind that, well, one is working, but she's single, so she has more flexibility, and she always likes doing stuff because she's like administrative.
Okay.
And those, so we'll talk more about it.
Yeah. No, sounds like a plan. You guys are getting there. It's awesome. I love being a part of your guys' story.
I appreciate you just being patient with us and getting what we're actually trying to do.
Yeah.
But most people that seem like they follow us, I guess it's a third, they want the food. So they want to know what's the next meal that we're going to prepare so that they'll pay it. And but we need to get something else rolling besides that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's not a bad thing that you guys have to identify.
It's fun. It's fun, and it's fun, and we enjoy it.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on, guys. Well,
right.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing you guys next week, and it's been an amazing time.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And yes, what if it didn't take a long time to succeed? And I like what you said. Our feelings may be real, but they don't have to be true. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah. Stole that from my wife. So
it's like you guys have old souls and all this wisdom for us.
We have a lot of
people
pouring into us. We have a lot of people pouring into us.
Okay. And you just snatched up that wisdom and it opens up your mind to say, wow, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, very different perspectives are so helpful. And especially when you're using them, I think that's my biggest thing. Our biggest thing is we just want to use those different perspectives and figure out what's working for us and figure out what helps other people. So that as the analogy is that I think I don't know where I saw this, but basically I don't want somebody to start where I started. I want them to start where I left off.
That's good.
And so it's like handing the baton to someone. You don't want them to like go back to your starting position and then like
Right.
run your race again. You want them to start in a better position.
Absolutely. Right. You want to be able to explain to someone without it taking years to for them to get it.
Right.
You want them to just be able to understand these are the steps of how to make this happen. I mean, I like multitasking. My husband doesn't. He likes to do one thing at a time. So I would always, and when I was working, I know what to pull to the top for priority at that moment, and then push down whatever's not in priority, and then bring up the next thing that you feel like you need to work. But I'd be spinning a lot of different things at one time, so it has been overwhelming and a lot. But at the same time, I know I have to change my thought process.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, very
Yeah.
much. I'm
And
in the
you-
same boat. I'm gonna keep doing it.
Yes. All right. Well, you have a wonderful weekend, and we will talk to you on Monday. My husband has since left the building.
Okay. Well, sounds good. Sounds
All
great.
righty. I was waiting. We did this at 3 on Monday. Okay, I had to really think. Monday, I know we're doing my son's birthday is Tuesday, so we're going out with him on Monday. But I think it's at 6:15. So I think when we finish with you, we'll roll out the door.
No, sounds good.
Yeah, it's a hectic weekend, but it'll be fun.
Come on.
Yep. All right. Enjoy, and we will see you Monday.
Sounds good, Harriet.
All right. Take care now.
Bye, guys.